All right, what is happening, travelers around the world? This is Matt Javit, Passport Joy, Travel Talk, coming at you. Today we're talking about Cebu, Philippines, and in particular a town called Moalboal within the Philippines. First, start off, I just want to read a quick review from Art on the World Barbershop Adventure series on Amazon. He says, love how he gets off the beaten path in many of these episodes, the incredible skills of these barbers and establishments that many would overlook goes to show never judge a book by its cover. Thank you, Art, for that review. Really appreciate it. That is what I'm trying to do with the series with World Barbershop Adventures, is to give that kind of that look into something that you might not be able to get at home and experience at home. And barbers, as you guys have seen, barbershops are very unique all around the world. So thanks again for that. Again, send me a review on Apple. Really like those Apple reviews, and on the World Barbershop Adventures on Amazon. That's a great way to help us out, because it gets us in front of the new viewers. They see that review and it might make them press click or go or whatever they're using to listen and watch what we got going out there. Okay, again, this is Matt Javit, part of the traveling couple, Matt and Nikki. We had the chance to pause our careers, travel for 27 straight months to 35 countries around the world. And now we're back in transition mode, doing our thing in America, though we still travel. Got some cool stuff coming up in the near future. And I just recently returned from a blast of a trip for 2 weeks in the Philippines with my brother. And I touched on the overall Philippines review in episode 81. This is the kind of get into the deep details of Cebu Island, and in particular Moalboal, where we spent 10 days just falling in love with this place and just really experiencing it. And again, we were supposed to go to Boracay, which is this exotic, awesome island where it's supposed to be a ton of fun. But because Chuck and I were having such a blast in Cebu, we decided to call an audible and cancel our flight, cancel our hotels, and just extend our trip in Moalboal, because we knew that there was more to take in, and we were just kind of scratching it. And the hope is maybe someday we get to go back to the Philippines and experience that other island, because there's 7,000 islands, I believe, in the Philippines. So there's a lot to experience here, and it's gorgeous. I mean, there was this really awesome video that I saw while I was in the Philippines. I think it was at one of the airports, that showed like the beauty of the coast and the culture. I'm going to put that in the show notes just in case you need further convincing to go to the Philippines, because that video really, to me, because I saw it towards the end of our journey, it embraced what I was going through. And I was like, yeah, that's how I feel. That's why I love this place so much. Okay, as I described before, as we land in Cebu, we instantly connect with a couple of friends of ours. Dan and his wife. Dan is a buddy of mine that I smoked cigars with back in Indiana. He had since retired to the Philippines, has a Filipino wife, amazing Helen. She was a fantastic host. But we connect with them, and we also connect with Dave, my buddy that helped me out with the production of the podcast, with his fiance. And we all just kind of hang out. We go to this awesome barbecue spot. But the next day we had a chance to take in the Super Bowl and really enjoy kind of the IT park within Cebu. And again, Cebu is this hub for call centers around the world, and most particularly for America. They speak great English there. A lot of people speak great English there. They educate them on our ways and our culture. And it's an amazing call center, not only for a call center for big companies, but also for administrative assistance for a lot of the remote work that's going on today for even smaller companies. So we had a chance to take in that area, and I swear, as you're walking through it, you wouldn't know if you were in Chicago, LA. I mean, it's just gorgeous. It's just this beautiful part of the city. It's called IT Park, and that's where we watched the game. This place called The Social, which is this huge bar, kind of outdoorsy. Everything out there kind of has the wind blowing through it, and it was a lot of fun. They had the game on 7 different screens, big screens, and if you have a chance to go to Cebu and you're in this area, it's what you'd hope to get out of a fun place like that. They've got a lot of karaoke and live music, but they also put on a great host for sporting events. So we took that in, and then the next day we headed to Moalboal on a 3-hour drive that I coordinated with our Airbnb host. It was a great way to coordinate that. And then we arrive late at night. It was about 9 o'clock after our stop. We arrive in Moalboal. So it's dark as we arrived at the city, but I'm sorry, not a city. It's a town that's on the coast, but it's known for its gorgeous beaches, white sand beaches, but also just gorgeous beaches, great for scuba diving, all kinds of different scuba places there. But we arrive at our Airbnb that's on the water. Again, it's like $60 a night, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, awesome bathroom. Overlooks the coastline, gorgeous, waves crashing at night. You can just hear it. We arrived, get all of our stuff in. They were great with checking us in and everything. Got the scooters lined up, and everything was aligned. And as Chuck and I were leaving out the back gate, right? It's kind of like a compound area where there's, I'll say like 5 houses in this little section of the water. And towards the back, we had probably a 30-yard walk to the back of the house that's off the water that had this private road going through it. On this private rocky road, that was a path of about probably 100 yards to another main road. But on this road that aligns the back of these 5 homes or so, it's dark. I mean, it's at this point, it's pitch dark. We got our stuff down, and we decided we're going to walk into town and grab a bite to eat and drink. And as we're walking out the back gate, we hear what we think is a wild pig. Now, this freaked us out because, again, we arrived late. We don't know what's around us. We just know that behind us on that street that we're on, there's a huge open field that's about 100 yards because you have to walk probably 25 yards straight on this path, and then you take a right that leads you to the main road for about 100 yards. But all that area out there is an open field. So, and we saw this as we were driving in. We saw the wild dogs, we saw the wild roosters, all the different goats, all the different things you saw on the roads or close to the roads that were just wandering. So Chuck and I leave out this back area, and again, my brother is a big dude. He's my older brother. People think I'm a big guy because I'm 6'6", probably 240-ish, but my brother is like wide. And it was so funny to watch the Filipinos look at my brother because his muscles are just massive, especially for his age and how big how I guess kind of ripped he is. They would just look at his muscles and they would just be in awe, and they would like bump each other and laugh. I loved walking behind him the entire time I was there just so I could look at their faces. And if you've never seen a picture of my brother, I'll put a link in the show notes just so you can click real quick so you can see his size. But he's a big dude, right? But so we're both out in the back. We're walking down this very dark road, and I screwed up, and I've since put it back in my bag. I did not have my military grade flashlight. I usually take a flashlight, especially like on the first or second night that we're going somewhere. I would take a flashlight in a situation like this just so not only to see what I'm doing, because the camera phones or the camera flashlight is okay, but not in situations like this where it's dark around you. So the flashlights are great because the stories I've told about Nikki and I being in Peru and other places where if you have the military grade flashlight and they're small, you can put the light in the eyes of obviously somebody that's trying to do harm to you because it's very blinding and it makes them pause, but also animals. We had to use it multiple times in Peru with the dogs because there's so many loose dogs in South America. But I didn't have that because in this situation, that would have been perfect because we could have not only seen what we're doing, but if there was an animal in the area, we could have shown the light on them and they would have froze. But we're in this back area. We hear this wild, in our head, it's some sort of massive boar. And we get freaked out. We're like, okay, we can't walk by this thing because it was the only pathway to get by it is where the noise is coming from. And we hear it squeaking and howling, and it freaks us out hardcore. So what we do is we circle back and we go back the way that we came from the home, and we hug the coastline. Because the hope is we could hug the coastline and then find a cut through on one of these 4 or 5 houses that are to the right of us, and then get to the road that way. So we go hug the coastline. We're down by the beach, and towards the end, there's a group of Asian friends together. And we go down there and we talk to them and we explain to them our situation about this wild pig being out there and how freaked out we are. And we end up finding out they're from Taiwan, but we can't necessarily cut through their home. They're renting this house from the local Filipino family that owns it. And they don't think it's a good idea. I wouldn't let us walk through their home either. But the only way to get kind of to the back of their house is if we had walked through their home, because there's not like as they explained it, there's not really a gate there. So at this point we have to circle back, and that was our only hope, is to get through their house. They're saying it's not a good idea. They're not comfortable with it. So we circle back to where we came from, and we both basically say, okay, deep breath, let's do this. And as we walk by it, we scurry rather quickly. And at that time, the wild pig must have moved in our head because it wasn't there. And we scurry by, and we get through the road, and it was pretty funny. We talked about it all night, and then we go out, have drinks, have fun, and come home. We have to walk by it when we're getting home, but there was no action there. And we actually had somebody drop us off at our house anyway, so it drove right by that little section that we were worried about, and we had an easy walk into the house and a gateway in. The next morning, we're pumped up because we had the scuba diving. Chuck gets up super early. He's out on the beach. We have our scuba diving lined up for 9:00. We walk by this area, and what it is a caged in group of pigs, but they're like tame, they're wild obviously, but they're like part of somebody's family, because there's like 6 of them there, and they're all together, and there's even like this little small puppy dog as well that is in that area, but they're harmless. So we had a good chuckle out of that. And it just goes back, like, it's so difficult to arrive at night at places because you just do not know what's around you, and it can freak you out to a level that if we had arrived during the day, we would have known what was there. We'd have known that was part of the surroundings. And we ended up passing these guys for 10 days, and it made me laugh every time we passed it, because in my head it was like some massive boar that was going to eat us, and then here it is. It's just these cute little pigs that were caged up. Probably at some point they're just part of somebody's family that was around there, because there's like I described, there's roosters everywhere, there's goats walking around, there's animals everywhere, and these are actually just caged there. Wasn't a wilder walking around. So that was funny. Chuck and I got a laugh out of that. But so the next day we start our scuba diving, and the idea was we were going to get scuba certified. This was Chuck's idea. It was a big part of our trip, a big reason we were going there. And I had a lot of anxiety. I don't know if you haven't listened to the Galapagos Islands, there was a situation where I was kind of left out in sea when I was snorkeling there. And it was shark infested, because we were there looking for sharks, and I was out there for quite some time, 20-25 minutes. I was in the middle of the ocean, and I'm just not a great swimmer to begin with, and I've had some weird situations that kind of freaked me out. So I had a lot of anxiety going into this, but I knew if I did it, it would be a huge life goal that I accomplished, overcome a fear, and it would be great. And I tell you, I'm so happy that I listened to my brother. I'm so thankful we found the scuba shop that we did, because it turned out to be an amazing experience. Tougher in the first couple of days, but then towards the end, it just got fantastic. I'm so happy that I went through the process, because now I'm scuba certified. I've got this whole new world that's in front of me. So we go to, it's called Cebu Diving Center. And right when we get there, they're amazing. They're welcoming. They told us that because we did all of our online courses, we went through the PADI course where we did all of our online work, so we knew kind of the basics of scuba from a book sense. And so when we get there, he essentially said, you got a head start on some of the other ones that are going to join you. It was a guy named Will and his girlfriend named Charlotte. They were traveling from the UK, and they were still doing some of the book work. So Chuck and I, part of the test is you got to do a 200-meter swim in the ocean and then a 10-minute water tread. So we decided we want to knock that out quick and go through that process. Well, I haven't swam in forever, to be honest with you. So the 200 meters in the ocean wasn't that easy for me. It wasn't extremely difficult, but it wasn't when you're battling the waves and you're in the ocean. I got a lot of anxiety built with this. It wasn't the greatest experience, but I got through it. It wasn't that hard. 10-minute treading was actually really easy for me, because you're in sea salt water, so you're floating most of the time, but you do have to put some effort in. But through that process, I was kind of tight, and I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but I worked out that morning. So while Chuck was hanging out at the ocean, I did a quick workout at the house, and then I do this swim, the water tread. I'm getting kind of tight. I tell you this because as we go through the training that day, our instructors, his name was Michael. He's from Germany, extremely direct guy, awesome instructor. He'd been doing it for years, and his style was perfect for us. He was kind of no nonsense. He would make jokes every once in a while, but for the most part, he knew his role was to get you to be comfortable in the ocean And that's what he did. And he was awesome at his job. Explained everything in great detail. Was just the perfect instructor for me and Chuck. And we had a blast with him. And we got to know him a little bit better later as we were getting drinks and stuff on some of these nights. But for the most part, just such a great instructor for scuba. But later that day, on this first day of our drills, because you're doing this 2 or 3 times a day where you're getting instructions in the ocean. They're teaching you everything about the equipment. They're teaching you how to descend in the water, ascend up, about buoyancy, all the different things that go into scuba. They're teaching that in the ocean. So you learn about your equipment on land, you get all your equipment lined up, you put it all on, you get in the ocean, and they teach you in the ocean, which is different than if you're in a swimming pool because you're battling the waves, your fins are going all over the place, and it can be difficult, but it's really kind of the best way to learn because that's what you're going to have to go through anyway. So you're doing 2 or 3 of these a day for 3 days, and that's at the end of the 3rd day. That's when you get certified. But this first day, as we're going out to descend for the first time along this rope, I get cramps in my legs, and it freaked me out quite a bit. So we'd already been in the ocean at that point, probably I'll say 45 minutes learning other things. And then this was like the last drill of that session. And as we're going out there, my right leg cramps up and I could feel my left leg is going to cramp too. So I quickly scurry to get to where I say scurry as essentially on my back paddling with my arms to where I could stand up. And I'm holding my legs, and then Michael comes and he says, "What's wrong?" And my first thought was to say Charlie horse. I don't know why I went with the most complex definition of my legs cramping up, but I said Charlie horse, and he's saying, I don't understand. And then finally it comes in my head to say, dude, just say cramp. So I said cramps, and he goes, oh, okay, hang here, you're fine. Feel free to just go in. We only have this one thing to do. We'll see you on the ocean at the shop, I guess. So that's what I did. I attempted to stretch my legs where I was standing because I could stand in this area. And as I'm going back to the shop, this huge, gorgeous turtle passes right in front of me. I'm probably, I don't even know, 15 feet off the coastline, and this thing just goes right in front of me. And at that point, I was like, dude, get your act together, get your legs right, eat some bananas and salt, whatever you need to do, because this is going to be awesome. And sure enough, over the next couple of days, that's what I did. I found it challenging, but then the more knowledge you get on scuba, the breathing process, and just the comfort of the buoyancy and when you go down and how everything kind of works together, and you talk to enough other scuba divers, not necessarily the instructors, but the people that are in the group, you get that comfort, and the people that have done dives before, because not this Cebu Diving Center, not only do they do instructions for the certification, which they are outstanding at, because we had a chance to meet 3 of them, and they each had a different style. And Cameron, the owner, I'm not sure if I don't think he's the owner. I never really asked him, but he runs it. Cameron runs the whole place, and he does an outstanding job. He's really good at matching people with what instructor might be good for them. So they do that really well there. But not only do they do the instructions, but they do just dives. People come in, they book their dives, and they take them out on these awesome dives. So you get a chance to get exposure to other divers from other parts of the world. And as you talk to them, and you hear some of their stories and their comfort in the water and everything that goes into it, you begin to get more comfortable, and you understand that, look, man, you're not your fears or anxiety is not isolated. Everybody kind of has these, but you get more comfortable over time. And what we're doing, and as close as we are to get air if you need it, we're not going that deep. You're only going, for our certification, when you go 60 feet, which might sound like a lot, but you can get there rather quickly and easily if you need to. So as you begin to know all these things and understand it, the anxiety goes away, and then you get to embrace how amazing it is to be underwater, take in all these different fish and the turtles. And we had a chance to see a sardine run. We knew that there were whale sharks in the area, so just understanding that was near us. We never had a chance to see one, but they were in the area. All these different factors, and just how different the life is underneath the water really opened us up. So extremely thankful that I went through that entire process. And talking to other divers, they also reiterated how great this place was to run, because it's a it's a surf shop. They do education, but afterwards they got their own little bar there, and you have a chance to kind of tell stories and talk and get to know these guys. It was a really great place, and we're happy to find that. So we spent the core of those days doing the scuba, and at night we would explore. So we would take the bikes out, see different parts of Moalboal. Again, Moalboal, Moalboal. It's this little coastal town. It's known for the ability to get in the water in the coastline and these sardine runs. There's also this element of great restaurants, bars, nightlife. It's not necessarily a backpacker's haven, though we did meet some backpackers, some kind of like long-term travelers, but it was more of like a lot of tourism and just people from all over the world hanging out and taking it in. It seemed like a lot of people were there for maybe 3 to 5 days as part of their Philippines trip, but Chuck and I ended up extending it because we were having so much fun. And something to think about as you're out at these places. Obviously, there's a lot of souvenirs to buy. There's a lot of great shops selling not only like scuba equipment, but knickknacks that are focused on the Philippines, bags, T-shirts. Each place had their own little field. The Philippines was amazing at making pizza. They had these wood-fired ovens that made outstanding pizza as well. So there was just this crazy mix of fun and different things. Cheap massages. You're talking, I don't know, $10, $8 to $10 for 60 to 90 minutes, depending upon how good it is. I mean, we saw them even as cheap as like $6. So all kinds of like health, wellness type focused stuff. Great places to eat. I already said that, but I'm gonna say it again. Great places to eat as far as they had like great vegan options, great vegetarian options, but then the seafood was outstanding. And great nightlife. They had a few. The Chili Bar was pretty much off the hook every night. Great DJs. They've got pool tables in the middle, so you can play pool and get any kind of drinks that you want there. And it's pretty live. And that's where we met a lot of the other travelers. And there was also low key spots, places where you can just grab a drink, meet some locals or travelers, and just hang out. And then we also saw within these restaurants and bars was the young people, ages probably 7 to, I'll say 13. They would sell and hustle goods in the bars and on the streets and at the restaurants, where they were selling like knickknacks or necklaces and bracelets and all the different things that they could hustle, with the idea that they would make this money and use it for their uniforms for school and education. So I say that because don't get turned off. I heard I won't label where they're from, but I heard people being ignorant to these kids. And you can tell, because Nikki and I had the chance, we've traveled to places where they're not welcoming to the children that are hustling on the streets, and the shop owners or restaurant owners would typically shoo them out and tell them to get away from their customers because they thought it was a negative thing. Where in this town, it seemed like the community was part of this engagement, and these kids would come in and they would be welcoming and they would know the store owners. And it was just part of it was like if your money was going back into the community anyway for the education aspect. At least that's what they told us. I don't care what they did with the money, but that was the idea, is like everybody was part of it. And I enjoyed that. Yeah, the kids, what's funny is when you buy something on the first day, the kids know who's going to buy, so they keep coming back. So Chuck and I would have the same kids over and over come to us asking us to buy things. So you could get annoyed by that if you chose to, but you can also have fun with it as well, because it gives you a chance to know these kids that are part of the community and just interact with them, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to work on their English skills. They're trying to work on their business skills by selling it. And I would negotiate with them just to see how they would respond. You get to do these cool things, and I had a chance to send them out, and because I bought a bunch of necklaces for this group that I work with in Indianapolis, so I had a chance to ask them to go do something creative, find a way to go find me 16 of these necklaces, and they would scamper and try to figure out, and they're working with all their friends together to solve this problem. So I just encourage you, when you're in somebody else's culture, don't take your culture with you. Be in their culture and embrace it and react to it accordingly, because I saw some rude people. You could tell it turned off those kids, and that stays with those kids for a lifetime, because they'll remember how people acted towards them when they were 12 years old. So don't mean to preach there, but I just saw some ignorant stuff that I'm like, man, I don't want to be that way. And Chuck was extremely kind and giving in some of these kids, and I'm sure that they'll forever remember us as hopefully a couple of good dudes that helped them out. And then, so we went through all that, and then we had a few big scooter days where we went out, and we left at like 8:30, and we were out on the bikes for 10 to 11 hours just scooting around, and we had a chance to see these amazing falls, Tumlog Falls, where there's a mud bath area, gorgeous area for photos, and it was just a chance to see the different aspects of the island other than the beach. And because they've got all these beautiful falls that are more like centrally located in the island. So we had a chance to go to a few different falls there. We got to see these monkeys at Oslav Wild Monkey Viewing that were part of a guy's house, a family's house. And they were wild monkeys, but because he treated them nicely and he gave them food, visitors could come off the street and interact with them as well. And that's it. Those scooter days are a blast. I just love those, a chance to get on the scooters. I'm going to talk more about scooters in an upcoming episode because it can be dangerous, and you want to be thoughtful on how you handle them. We had nothing but positive experiences on our scooters on this particular trip, but you got to be careful. So I'm going to talk more about that in a future episode. But these days were a blast and a lot of fun, and it just gives you a great way to see parts of the culture because you can just stop and pull off the road and experience it and take it in and then get back on the road, and all the sights and sounds and the visuals and everything you're taking in as you're going down these small roads of these communities, you get a real chance to understand a little bit better than if you were in a car stopping and getting out the car in the next spot as well. So we really enjoyed that. I saw a ton of people playing basketball on the way. I talked about how much the Filipinos love basketball. That is absolutely true. And the Filipinos, I'll touch on it again. I touched on it the last podcast, but amazing people, kind, warm, welcoming, great English, a ton of fun, great sense of humor, and just a blast. Like you can really see the Spanish in them because I've had a chance to be around a lot of Latinos and Mexicans, and you can see kind of that Spanish aspect of the Filipinos more so than a traditional Asian person. Yes, they're Asian, but it's like a Latino Asian, and it's just a different vibe. And because they love basketball so much, know a ton about American culture, we could really interact with them well, and they're just amazingly fun and kind people. We did go to cockfights on a Sunday. They're on Sundays at Moalboal, and I had a chance to talk to a few locals. They said, Matt, you absolutely have to go. I know it was a big part of their culture, the Filipino culture, so I definitely wanted to take it in. I know some people frown upon it. I'm going to talk that again. I'm going to talk about that separately in a podcast and a YouTube video because I think our view of it is skewed. And so I'm gonna dive in deeper, but that day was an absolute blast, a ton of fun. It was me, Chuck, and our buddy Aaron that we met there. We went out, took it all in with the locals. I was really involved with the locals. We ended up sponsoring a cock from this family because they couldn't afford to take the cock there, but because I put up money for them to bet on it, it made it so they could go do that. So that was a lot of fun to be part of that. Actually drove the cock to the fights with the dad. The father was, I think he's probably in his 50s, maybe early 60s, but I was driving, I had the cock behind me, and then he was holding on to the box that held the rooster. So that was crazy, and that's a pretty fun story. I'll get into the details of that, but that was an awesome, fun day. And then the last couple of days, we got our own dive. We got some separate dives in. Chuck actually went night diving, which was awesome. I took that day off, but he went night diving. He said it was a great experience and it made him more comfortable in the water. And then we ended up befriending a local. His name is Dax. I'm going to put his link in the show notes to his Instagram page. This dude was an awesome local to befriend. We actually met him in the cockfights, but then we saw him out at the bar and had a chance to just kind of catch up with him, understand more about his story. And then he took us out on a day to go see some of the waterfalls. And he's just a great dude, easy to interact with, and just knows the ins and outs of the island. So he took us to some places that most tourists might not be able to get to go see. And it was just a lot of fun. And we even had a situation where Aaron's tire was flat. And because we were with Dax, he ended up driving that scooter with us to a shop, got it fixed in about an hour while we were out going to see these other waterfalls. And being able to do that with a local and then kind of bypassing some of the long lines and pathways at some of these waterfalls was just a great way to experience, and it's makes it super easy. So I'll put Dax's information in the show notes so you can see that in case you're going to this area and you want to look up a local that knows this stuff. But that was it. We had a few more nights of late night drinks and just hanging out with Dax and some of his buddies and playing pool and stuff. When we went to the falls with Dax, he took us to the Kawasan Falls, and so we did some cliff diving. They had one of the swing jumps that you hold onto the swing and then you jump into the water. That was a blast. And it was that whole day. It was kind of adventurous and a lot of fun. It was a great way to wrap up the trip in Moalboal, because the next day is when we took the van ride into Cebu for our flights to Manila. And then we also had a chance when we, at the end of that van trip, to stop at my buddy Dan's house, see his house, see how he lives in Cebu, and understand the daily life of somebody that used to be an American that now lives, I mean, he's still an American, but now decided to live his retirement years in the Philippines is really cool. So to be able to see that, how he did it, and just how closely related it is to what we do on a regular basis. He's just in a different part of the world, but he gets all the television that we would get. He had his own cigar room. I mean, how far the dollar goes in places like this would blow your mind. And everybody talks about healthcare and things like that. Healthcare is great there and super cheap. And everything else, transportation, food, everything that is part of your cost of living is a lot lower there. And then you've got this amazing weather year round. So that's why Dan's decided to live his later years there. And so for us to be able to see that was pretty cool. And that's really it. That's that's the highlights of Moalboal. We loved it, obviously, and couldn't recommend enough. If you're thinking about getting scuba certified, especially if you're going to the Philippines, you want to do it. The Cebu Diving Center is unbelievable, and then just everything this little town has to offer. But don't just go to that little town. Take in the other parts that are offered around it, because I'm sure you'll be surprised at how amazing this part of the world is. And I will put links in the show notes for some of the restaurants and places that we really enjoyed. Everything there was pretty top notch, but you'll just from a cultural standpoint and the uniqueness of it all, but a few places that really stuck out for us, I'll put those in the show notes as well, so you can check those out if you decide to go to this part of the planet. That is it. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully at some point in your life you get to experience all this, and if I missed something, feel free to put that in the comments section on something. If you've been there and you enjoyed it, add that. And as always, share other comments on Apple Podcast or World Barbershop Adventures on Amazon. Really appreciate those. I'll read those on the air. And tune in. Season 3's out now. Having some great conversations on the future of that series. A lot of cool stuff going on there. You'll probably see the Cebu episode within a week or two. So you can see the visual of what I'm describing. I went to 2 amazing barbershops in Cebu. And it was, and then you'll get to see the parts of the scuba and everything that we did there with some of the waterfalls as well. And then once I get that updated, I'll put that, I'll add that to the website where these show notes are, so you can go and check that out. All right. Thank you so much for all the support. Go to passportjoy.com for any other information you might need. And as always, have a blast planning that next big trip and make it happen.